Welcome back to On Assignment, the podcast where we explore the vital work of strengthening our communities and the information that binds them together. I'm your host, Liz Cochrane. Today we're tackling a fundamental challenge facing local news and civic life across the country: trust. How do we rebuild it, especially in a world where we're bombarded with information, yet feel increasingly disconnected? My guest today is Jane Swisshelm, an expert who has been deeply involved in studying and shaping the information landscape in central Pennsylvania. Jane, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Liz. It's a crucial conversation, and I'm glad we're having it.
So, recent research looking at central Pennsylvania's information ecosystem paints a picture of disconnection. And this was shocking to me. Less than 4 in 10 residents feel at least somewhat connected to their local community, and only 1 in 9 feels completely connected. At the same time, trust in traditional news sources like newspapers is sadly quite low. Your work highlights that rebuilding trust isn't just about facts, but something more. Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. All of this research comes from the Steinman Institute for Civic Engagement and Press Forward. They're working really hard to gather data and bring together civic-minded individuals and news organizations. It's still in the early stages, but I'll share what came out of the first major session last month. One of the high-level themes that emerged from the gatherings and conversations about the local news and information ecosystem is this idea that rebuilding trust requires relationship and curiosity. It's not just about making sure the information is accurate. While facts are important, trust is fundamentally relational. People trust people, not just institutions or articles.
So it's less about just publishing accurate stories and more about how those stories and the people behind them connect with the community?
Exactly. Trust can be built through informal, in-person spaces where journalists and citizens interact. Think about places like food truck gatherings, open mic nights, or community forums. These settings allow for face-to-face conversation, which, as one participant noted, is often the only way we'll reach everyone. When you can look someone in the eye, have a shared meal, or just chat informally, you start building that human connection that fosters trust.
That makes sense. It moves away from news organizations just broadcasting information to a community and shifts towards being part of the community.
Precisely. In our most recent gathering, there was strong energy around humanizing journalists and being transparent about how coverage decisions are made. Ideas like having journalists from different outlets host a podcast explaining editorial choices or using shared bylines, and collaboration between news outlets so audiences recognize the people reporting the news. It's about showing the human element behind the headlines.
You also mentioned bringing people together in existing community spaces for dialogue. How does that connect to building trust in information?
It's about bridging divides. Some recommend using places like faith-based groups or civic organizations to host conversations across political lines. The insight here is that people are more likely to find common ground when they gather around shared neighborhood ties, shared experiences, or local culture, rather than starting from partisan viewpoints. When national narratives feel overwhelming and divisive, zooming in locally often reveals more space for dialogue and understanding. These local conversations, facilitated in a safe space, can help humanize perspectives and build trust between people first. This then creates a better environment for shared understanding, which is key for trusting information.
So trust between people can pave the way for trust in information?
Yes, it's a kind of quantum civics, as one person put it. The idea is that at the national level, things feel chaotic and divided, but locally, where people know each other, problems feel more real and solvable, and there's more space for conversation. By breaking divisions down to the local level, we can facilitate understanding across differences. This process of building trust with each other creates a foundation for trusting shared sources of information.
What about the disconnect between generations regarding news consumption? How does trust factor into that?
Yes, there's a noticeable gap. Older residents who might miss the ritual of reading a physical paper and discussing it can feel disconnected as traditional formats fade. Younger people consume news in different ways, often through digital or social media platforms like TikTok or YouTube. This creates both a challenge and an opportunity to reimagine local storytelling to build belonging across generations. Co-designing solutions with older adults, for example, or creating intergenerational storytelling projects could help bridge this gap and build trust across age groups. It requires intentional effort to reach people where they are and in formats they use.
It sounds like rebuilding trust isn't a passive activity.
Not at all. We're learning that trust isn't just a feeling, it's a practice. It's built by doing what you say you'll do, making people feel seen and heard, and connecting on a human level. Barriers like misinformation and fear of judgment exist, but creating magnetic and meaningful trust-building experiences, maybe through themed community gatherings or events that blend learning, dialogue, and joy, can help. This work needs to be led by local people woven into existing community rhythms and feel welcoming and free.
So it's about consistency, empathy, and showing up in the community?
Exactly. Consistency, clarity, and humanity in how news is presented are also key. People want to see themselves reflected in the coverage, but they also want honesty. Clear headlines, nuanced summaries, and clearly separating fact from opinion are important editorial standards that build trust in the information itself.
What are some concrete steps that could be taken based on these ideas?
Well, they've identified several potential next steps. Things like piloting small group dialogue circles in trusted community spaces, training local facilitators in bridge building skills, mapping those trusted community spaces, or hosting community table events with guided discussions. On the trad media side, it could involve training journalists in audience-first storytelling, featuring local storytellers across generations, creating media literacy toolkits, or hosting public storytelling spaces. It's about intentionally creating spaces and processes that prioritize connection and mutual understanding.
Jane, this has been incredibly insightful. It's clear that addressing the challenges in our information ecosystem goes much deeper than just news delivery. It's fundamentally about human connection and rebuilding the social fabric of our communities.
That's the core of it. By focusing on building relationships, facilitating dialogue, and being transparent, we can start to rebuild the trust needed for communities to be truly informed and engaged. It's slow work, but essential. And we've got a long, long way to go. But the Steinman Institute and Press Forward Central Pennsylvania are hard and work taking the first steps.
Jane Swisshelm, thank you for sharing your expertise with us on Assignment.
My pleasure, Liz.
That's all the time we have for today. Join us next time on Assignment as we explore how focusing on solutions, not just problems, can create civic joy in our communities.